What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be talking about Next Goal Wins. This is a movie that I have been really looking forward to because Tika Watiti is one of my favorite creators. I really love a lot of his films. Jojo Rabbit is my personal favorite. I really like what he did with that film. There were a lot of elements that I really enjoyed that really pulled on my heartstrings. And with Next Goal Wins, there are a lot of elements that are appealing to me, especially when it comes down to the sports films, because I am not a big fan of sports. I don't like watching sports. However, I do have a very fond love for sports movies. So I was really hoping that this movie was going to be right up my alley. And I will just say this, it wasn't for me. This tells the story of the infamously terrible American Samoa team who are always down on the rankings. They have never scored a goal, and so they recruit Michael Fassbender, who is really not the best coach, in order for them to get to the top. And right there and then, as soon as the movie started and I saw the first shot and I heard the first piece of dialogue, I knew I was going to be in trouble because there are elements in this movie that I kind of enjoyed. However, this movie is not as funny as it should have been. There are a lot of jokes in this movie that really don't hit, and it just felt a little bit awkward and cringy. It felt like Taika Waititi took what he didn't learn from Thor Love and Thunder and just put it in here, because when you look at his other films, there are a lot of moments of humor and levity that he pours into his films. And not once in this film did I feel like those heartstrings were being pulled for me personally. This is a paint by numbers film, so if you've seen any sports movie ever, then you know exactly how this movie is going to end. There are a couple of characters that I was not able to get behind. One of them is our lead, Michael Fassbender, who plays this coach that really does not give two shits about anything. He's just thrown into America Samoa because it's either this or he has no job. He's basically forced to take this job, and not once is there any kind of progression for his character. There is a little bit towards the end of the film, but by the time that we had already gotten to that point, I had already known what his deal was, and it didn't really affect me as much as it should have. And when it comes down to the humor in this movie, a lot of it was not hitting for me, and there was just a lot of face palming that I did throughout the entire movie. There were a couple of chuckles that I got out of me, but overall, there was just nothing in here that reminded me of that Taika Watiti magic, and that is really disappointing coming from somebody that really enjoys his work. I even like him in Free Guy. I know a lot of people had a lot of issues with his character in Free Guy. I personally got a real kick out of it, but we don't have any of that Taika Waititi magic, and every character in this movie is so one-dimensional that it's hard for me to even get attached to anybody, because they're all basically playing the same characters, doing the same gags, and it just didn't work for me. There is just one character in this movie, played by Kaimana. I do apologize if I butchered the name. Her relationship with Michael Fassbender, I thought was developed good enough, but it wasn't developed enough for me to care, because there were a lot of moments in this movie where it just felt like it was just going at a really fast snake speed, and it was really hard for me to get attached to anybody, because aside from Oscar Knightley, who has a job basically everywhere on the island, and David Fance, who plays the ex-coach of this team, there's really nobody in this movie to really root for. When it comes down to this movie as a sports film, even though every single sports film that you've seen is paint by numbers, you know exactly how it's going to end, there is always that level of inspiration that comes to me whenever I see it, and it just gets me inspired. It gets me teary-eyed. Nothing in this movie really got me teary-eyed, and most of it is because we're spent with this character played by Michael Fassbender that is completely unlikable. Aside from one little thing, he has no story arc in this movie, and it's hard for me to get behind this character, and that is where the real issue comes into play, because I don't think this movie is, surprisingly, well written. The jokes in this movie felt really flat. It didn't feel like an inspirational sports movie, and there was really nothing in this that's going to make me say, hey, I want to go back and check this movie out. It was just one of those things where I just came out really disappointed, especially coming from a Taika Waititi fan. So if you were a fan of the humor in Thor Love and Thunder, you're going to get plenty of that. But if you weren't a fan of the humor in Thor Love and Thunder, this movie is not going to work, because it is just a lot more of that. But those are my thoughts on Next Goal Wins. Are you guys planning on checking this film out, or do you guys have no interest? Go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys for my next reviews.